people, and welcome to my YouTube channel called Conversations with the Feminist. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hopefully subscribing, if you will, and liking and commenting on my channel. This is my first video. Actually very nervous, but I feel like my content is very useful and it's something that's so relevant and so underrated in our country, and I think that if I don't share my opinions today, then I never will. So as you can tell from the title, it's called Conversations with the Feminist, and I identify with feminism. I am a feminist. I believe in the liberation and emancipation of specifically Black women in South Africa. So that's why I think that spreading awareness and being an informed individual about female empowerment is so useful in our country. Just a brief introduction. I am Stha Msomi. I am a student at the University of Witwatersrand. I'm doing my second year in a degree in Bachelor of Accounting Science in the hopes of becoming a chartered accountant one day. And I am 19 years old, very young, but I'm from Durban originally, so ngumZulu, and I feel like you'll get to know more of me as the video continues and as my channel hopefully progresses, which it will. So I am excited to be part of the YouTube journey and to launch, I guess I'll call it a YouTube career. But basically why I saw the need to actually start a YouTube channel that addresses something that's so relevant in our society is because yes, we have all these South African beauty bloggers and beauty vloggers like Mihlalin Damase and Sinovuyo Mondliwa for natural hair and all these other gorgeous women that are dominating the YouTube scene in our country, and I think we all watch their content. I personally watch people's content on YouTube and I find it very useful, but we don't have enough people that will actually use the platform of YouTube to educate fellow young people about things like feminism, things like racism, things like sexism, things that are so pertinent in our society, and it needs to be addressed. Otherwise really we'll just live in a shallow society that focuses on things that are not as relevant as the bigger issues that are pressing. And I think that the reason why certain topics like feminism and racism and many other topics in our country are not addressed is because people think it's too taboo or it's too controversial, and to dive into it would cause a lot of controversy. But what would the point of living be if we didn't address all these controversial issues? If we weren't as unapologetic and honest and cutthroat about the truth of our society and the wrongs about our society and how we need to change it. So I think that me being unapologetic about my opinions and being really candid is going to really help, because during the course of the video and my YouTube channel, I really am going to be unapologetic about how I feel about our society and how it systematically oppresses women. And I think when people reach that level of being unapologetic and not being sorry about what they say, that's when people actually think about these ideas and it resonates with them. And from then onwards, we can actually start progressive change, not to wait on our government or to wait on some magical higher power to intervene and with some divine order to change the way our society is structured. But if we speak up as young women and realize that we are being oppressed every day in unconscious and conscious ways, it's very subliminal, but it is present and it needs to be stopped. After that huge introduction, let me just get to the crux of the video, and I think there's no better way to start my video than to actually introduce feminism and what it is, because a lot of people have the idea of feminism misconstrued, and I blame it on mass media. I blame it on people that are not informed, because one thing I forgot to disclose is that although I'm going to share my opinions, I read a lot. I read a lot of feminist literature and feminism books. books from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Angela Davis, Sojourner Truth, and all these other journals that feminists have written throughout decades. So I'm not just speaking from some euphoric state in my head and making up all these definitions, because in society you have to be very responsible for what you say. And if you're going to put your content on a platform like YouTube and writing blogs and all these things, you have to realize that what you say has impact and it influences the paradigms of people. And so if you aren't responsible for what you say and you don't verify it, or you don't confirm it to the third party, you could cause a lot of mental damage in people's minds. So I just want to say that people have to be responsible for what they say, and I take full responsibility for what I say. That's why I read a lot of feminist literature when I reached the stage of being conscientized and being aware of the subtle discrepancies that exist between males and females in our society. But I will get back to introducing feminism. So feminism, as defined by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and if you are living on this earth, I'm sure you've heard this definition at some point in your life. Feminism is the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. It is a philosophy, it is a way of thinking, and it is a philosophy that should be implemented in our day-to-day lives. And that is what it simply means. It's not to say that feminists are women that hate men, or feminists are the ones propagating and propelling the notion of men are trash and all these other conventional phrases and slogans that we've been hearing today, because that simply isn't what feminism is. And I feel so disheartened because those are the irresponsible statements that people make that have resulted in people not finding feminists credible, people not finding feminist people that are actually towards or for the notion of economic female empowerment and many other aspects of empowering the female. But if we look at feminism in the context of its definition and its philosophy, it is a way of thinking and a way of looking at both genders, male and female, realizing that men and females should be given the same opportunities, they should be given equal opportunities, and they should be treated with the same respect. The respect that a male receives, a female should respectively also receive. And that is what it simply is. And I think it ties in with the whole thing of men assuming that because feminists are predominantly females, they can't be a feminist. But men can be feminists too. Because if we go back to the definition, a person, a human being, there's no denotation or connotation of a person having male or female genitals defining their gender. It is just a human being that believes in the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. So clearly, anyone can identify with the philosophy of feminism and become a feminist and propagate the notion of feminism. Because the one thing that I've struggled with, and the one thing that's aggravated me so much is the fact that every time I go into a setting and I set my stance on gender inequality and say that I am a feminist, most males will not know what it is or not be able to identify with it just because it's predominantly attached to females. And that also propagates another mindset and paradigm that's been formed about men running away from presumably feminist or feminine concepts and things, and that evasion of it is a way to protect some fallacious idea of masculinity, which I will address later on in this video. But just to set a ground understanding and the status quo of what feminism is and how it's been developed over the years, that is a definition, and I feel like everyone should be able to identify with it, because if you are a human being, then you should be a feminist. If you are a human being with good intentions, a human being that wants to live in a just and equal society, you will believe that men and females should be given the same opportunities. And I say this because there's so many places in the world right now where females are subjugated and where they're being oppressed. a few years ago, I read a story about women it was a Middle Eastern country. I think it was Saudi Arabia or one of the Middle Eastern countries. I don't want to say, you know, bluntly in case I get the country wrong. But in one of those countries, females weren't allowed to drive. I'm not sure if that legislation has been reformed now, but back then, it was a legalized law that said that females are not allowed to drive a car. Now, if you think about it, the concept of it is absurd. It's ludicrous, and it just shows how men and females aren't viewed in the same light or viewed at the same standard. Because what makes a man so special that he should be given the right to drive, whereas a woman can't be able to drive? You know, and it's those subtle things that limit the freedoms of women. Because the smallest example of a car grants you so much liberty because you are independent. You can transport yourself to wherever you want without depending on public transport or someone else. Basically, you're in control of where you want to go in that moment. If you want to go to Santon City in that moment, you're able to drive yourself there. But if there's a law saying women can't drive, that's indirectly insinuating that the actions of a woman or her whereabouts or her movements even should be controlled by an external factor, not her. Now, how is that fair? Because in my view, it just paints out the picture of how society tries so hard to control every single movement or decision or even paradigm of a woman. And the simple example of not being able to drive a car sends out a louder message of how our governments and how our society has tried to control women. Another example I have is from actually a CNN documentary that I watched back in December, because I was at home for an entire month from a school break, obviously, and all I could do was just to watch CNN. I know most people will think that's weird, but yeah, your girl did. But basically, I watched a program on CNN that covered a story about a tradition practiced in Nigeria and the Northern African countries called the practice of trokoshi, I think, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But that practice basically entails young girls being taken and separated from their families in the case where a family member has committed a sin or contravened a law or has done something shameful. So, for example, if one of my uncles had to maybe steal at his barber shop, steal at his barber shop, and they eventually get caught, in order to pay for those sins or absolve the family as a whole, the clan, from the sins of the uncle, they will send their youngest daughter or their youngest girl to this monastery, or I'll call it a monastery, or like this home where this ancestral person, or I think in the context of South Africa we can call it isangoma, but basically a person who's able to connect with your ancestors, heads the home. And so a young girl from that family will actually go to that home and live there and perform menial tasks such as cleaning the house or cooking for this ancestral interceder for a long time, and that will be done to absolve and cleanse the family from the sin and the shame. But when I watched the documentary, it was a Nigerian woman that was speaking, and she was telling her story and her account of her being in the Trokoshi practice. And the way she spoke about it and the way she exposed it made me realize how that practice alone shows an inherent disrespect, misogynistic view of women. Because why is it that a young girl that has a bright future ahead of her, a young girl that can go to school, get educated, get a degree, get a good job, start a business, now has to have her entire bright future taken away just to cleanse the sins of some man that didn't have the common decency to behave like a good human being? Why can't it be a boy? a male child in the family that can be the one to absolve the family from their shame and from their sin. I'm not saying that anyone should be, taken to that tradition to carry it out, because at the end of the day, taking people against their own will isn't right. But the mere fact that a female is selected for that very tradition is so unfair, and it is so discriminatory to the mere existence of females. Because if you can take a girl and not value her life and not value her ambitions and her goals, but rather just see her as some person that should be cleaning or cooking or doing these menial tasks, and if that's all you can think of for a young girl, then clearly you have a sexist mindset. And so when people tell me that we've progressed and we've moved on, we've changed, we've transformed as a society, we have these amazing and beautiful gender commissions, gender equity commissions, and all these laws that grant a non-sexist society and non-sexist community, it's actually not being implemented, and people aren't being exposed to the truths of the underground patriarchy and sexism that is being perpetuated by so many people. I can go on to talk about the sexist paradigms in our own homes, even the fact that young girls are encouraged to be the ones that clean, to be the ones that cook, to be the ones that make sure that the family is okay and everyone is set to go, and the wife being the main bearer of house chores and responsibilities is in itself sexist. Because if we actually think about this at the most rudimentary level, the duties to clean, to cook, to look after yourself should be a basic human duty. Everyone should be able to do it. It shouldn't be bestowed upon a female to make sure that those responsibilities are catered to. And again, it stems from a sexist mindset. It stems from the fact that women are merely seen as nurturers. Women are merely seen as people that should be equated to these menial tasks, which shouldn't be the case. And it supersedes things like cleaning and household chores and all these other sexist practices. It even moves up to a work level. It moves up to a political level, economically, and in so many other ways. But I guess I will explain that in my next videos that are to come. But this video is basically to just set the scene and make you realize the status quo, and for you to open your eyes to the actual conditions we live in. The fact that sexism is not far away from you, it is right in front of your face. And if people don't wake up and realize that we do live in a society that ostracizes women and that treats men like God even, that's a far-fetched example, but that's the current state we live in. If we don't realize that, then we have a long way to go. Because it surprises me even when people are shocked about rape statistics or femicide statistics, when they don't actually realize that the very cause of rape, of femicide, of all these other violations and violence against women stems from a mindset that degrades and dehumanizes women. It doesn't just no man just wakes up one day and they're like, oh, okay, I just want to rape someone one day, or I just want to kill my girlfriend one day. No, it stems from you not respecting women and you not holding women at a level that is the same level as you are. Because for you to exercise some sort of power over someone, they have to, in your mind, be superior than you. And that's the root cause of all the injustices that we actually see today. So I think that if people open their mind to the reality of sexism and why we need movements like feminism to stand up for women's rights, to stand up for women's social standing, then we could ignite so much change in the years to come. But I think that it takes all of us to work together, and it takes all of us to actually open up our minds to such movements that cater for a beautiful philosophy of equality of the sexes. Because if people don't open up their minds, then I don't think we'll actually have any real change and any progress. But at this state, I will say I am angry. At this stage, I think I'm an angry black woman that lives in a very sexist country, in a very sexist world. And at this point, if it means me starting a YouTube channel or starting up movements to actually get people to be aware of the states we live in, then so be it. Because I can't live, and I hope that you who is watching this, or the people that are watching this, are not going to be comfortable and complacent with the current state we live in. Because if we are complacent and if we don't do anything, then think about your future daughters that are gonna be born into such a sexist world. Think about your sons that are gonna be born to become perpetuators and to become drivers of patriarchy and misogyny. So we are all responsible for making a change, and that's non-negotiable. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for hopefully liking. I'm thanking you in advance. But I will see you next time, and I'll explore deeper content and deeper aspects of feminism and the actual social constructs that we have. So there's more to come. This is just, to lay down the foundation for you to understand the status quo, to understand the urgency, and to understand why I, decided to actually speak up about this, because something needs to happen. So I'll see you next time, and thank you for watching.